come from up and down the scale of lived years. Anju, Makhija, Mamta, Sagar, and then we have the very young Tyro from Singapore, Daryl over here, Daryl Lim, and yours truly. So, a poet's journey. When we were discussing this session before we came to Bangalore amongst ourselves over the internet,
Testing.
I think the last word on that was spoken by Anju. She said that a writing career of close to 40 years in 8 minutes. So I said, yeah, I mean, we'll milepost ourselves with poetry. So a poem becomes a milepost. And each of us looks at that milepost differently, whatever it means for us. Is it a turn in the road? Is it a crossroads where I found myself stranded for a while? Is it the joys of arrival, that I have arrived as a poet, found my voice? So it could be anything, it could be all of this. So without further ado, I would begin with a very loose structure, with Anju beginning, and then Mamta, then Daryl, and I will bring up the rear, and then we'll have probably a second round, if possible. So I would request Anju Makhija. Anju, please take us on a journey. I think she's going to begin with Mumbai.
No, not necessarily. I think we've heard enough of the city, have we? Okay. Since the title says Poet's Journey, I feel it's important that I mention that for me the journey has been spontaneous. 2 or 3 points. It has been totally spontaneous. There's no planning a journey. And in these times of, Google Maps and everything is planned, but I strongly believe that poetry is spontaneous. And the journey too should be spontaneous. Because unless you are surprised in anything in life, don't expect another person to be surprised or even to have empathy or identification with that work, whatever it is, in whichever relationship. So that's the first thing. And what was really strange was, I think I was 8 years old. I was standing in my balcony and some construction workers had those little girls' things on top. And I just spoke a poem to myself. I'll just speak 2 lines of a simple poem by an 8-year-old. I am happy, you are not. I have the things you haven't got. Am I happier than you? I should say not. It's you who toil all day long and have enough to keep, only enough to keep life going on. So that is a very simple poem. You try to rhyme it when you're young and things like that. But see, I can still remember it after so many years. It stayed with me. And one of the things that we discussed was what endures. And so I think it's just not a matter of reading 3 poems only at random. Also the poems we read connect to our journey as poets. Unfortunately, the journey these days is measured by the books we publish. And I guess in this limited time, that will be an easy landmark to go by. So after that poem, when I wrote when I was 8 years old, I don't think I wrote for 30 years or longer, because like all of us, we get involved in our career, and I was in media, which is rather demanding, television and the like. But later on, I was born in Pune and Mumbai, up and down. So when I came back to Mumbai, I was very, we spoke about the city influencing us. So Mumbai has always really, really influenced me. I've hated it, but I've not been able to get away from it. And some of the factors which I've hated it for are still there, seeing the children work as they do at 8 years. And anyway, as Debasish wants us to read a poem, so the first book was View from the Web. Now that book I definitely felt in a web, I guess. And at that time, I was also moving into absurd theater and surrealism. So while the poems were, I get reflected my environment, they also were, as all poems are, and a weird internal journey. And I'll read a poem called An Order for a New Head. Just get the page number, 127. Well, you know, we all speak to God at some point or the other in our life. Some earlier, some later on. And this was my request to God after living in Mumbai. At that time, you know, the bomb blasts were going on and all kinds of rubbish. You know, the trains of Mumbai, people falling off. Not that it's all bad. I like it too. I mean, it's a city of culture, of art, music. So I guess I'm speaking to God here. An order for a new head. Small, please. Gray and white cells. Pink too, with bits and bytes, B-Y-T-E-S, with bits and bytes. Now make the numbers even, enough odd ones. Mold the skull with RDX plastic, the stick-fast variety. Set the teeth firmly, rattling disturbs infants. Keep the tonsils. I like to trap irritants for happy days. 1 year is plenty. Bomb blasts are deafening in stereo. Make the nostrils narrow, like a bone marrow, air enough to live. Now the main request. Give me a third eye, like the one on the truck. A bright red light between two headlights, peering through the throat of a village road. That's all. That's all. Brandy eye and the third eye. Brandy eye and the third eye. In the moonlight, coconut trees, omnipresent gods. Two gods too many. Papaya's pulpy breasts, squeeze them dry. Falling twigs, a shower of snakes. Swallowing them, I emerge Medusa. Shedding my skin, I recoil in the armchair, lost to the world. Get the picture? I'm Lao Tzu, smiling at Mona Lisa. You want me to go on? Yeah, a little bit. Okay, so the next quickly.
It's one of my favorites, actually. It's one of my favorites, the poem that you just read.
Sorry?
One of my favorites, the one that you just read.
Yeah, okay. Well, I must say Debasish has been very, very encouraging. And this is sort of my selected work, which is, I guess, covers a few books together in one book, making it easier for me to carry it around and read instead of all the books. And Debasish, of course, reviewed it in his very, very special style. If he likes it, I'm also grateful to this person I like very much. Okay, the second thing, I'll quickly get to it, is after city life, I guess not obviously, but I moved towards rural life. Maitri spoke about walking around, and I think when you move to a rural area in the village, you just walk around all the time. And you also meet people, get to know their myths and traditions firsthand. And that was really, really an experience for me. So the village I stayed in, I think 15 years, almost after marriage, was one that gave rise to many poems. And there's one which I was planning to read, was called A Farmer's Ghost. which is sort of an award-winning poem, and I feel obliged to read it. But since we are so close to lunchtime, I think I'll read something called Pickling Season. It may help us prepare to enjoy our lunch rather. So this is also set in the farm. Now in the farm we have the luxury of eating under a mango tree. Now somebody mentioned that the tree here is 800 years old. I overheard a conversation, and the other said, no, not 800, but about 100 years old. I said, what the hell, it's old enough, so. And so I'll just go to page 85. So, in the farm, there's no question of kilo or half kilo. When you have these kairis, raw mangoes, it really pours. Hundreds of them are falling there. Or if you are growing bengans, eggplants, again, thousands of them. I'd never made eggplant pickle, but I started making it. But anyway, getting to this poem, Pickling Season, we were sitting under the mango tree, and I guess it's a poem about relationships as much as it is about pickling. Every summer, we laze under the mango tree, discussing unpatented recipes. When raw mangoes drop on our head, we pause to appreciate nature's bounty. Then on to peeling, chopping, salting, boiling, spicing, bottling. Will the sorcery work? Will the sorcery work? By year's end, we hope, when the pungent brine matures to its prime. The zing depends on the turmeric balancing the tamarind, the chili complementing the amchur, and if the asafoetida, poured in candlelight, late one night, works for pickles, as it seldom does for couples, apart since the first pickling season. The alchemy has rarely bewitched. Jaggery sours, vinegar sears the tongue. To change the recipe we've tried with old ladies' advice. But nature moves inexorably and life proceeds predictably beneath the mango tree. I'm waiting for Debasish. One more to end it?
Quick one, a short one.
Short one, yeah. I'll keep it a really short one because anyway, the books kept on coming and the translations also. I started translating Sufi poetry, and I found that was really in my new poems, that is really very much present. Now, I am sure most of you all are familiar with Sufism and some Sufi symbols, I'm sure, because this poem does have some. The symbol of the wine giver, there's a symbol of cutting off the head, which is a Sufi symbol for cutting off the ego. And we've all read Rumi and so many of them. And I went to Kutch on a journey, we're talking about places and journeys, and this is a fairly short poem. And there, I guess because I was translating a 16th century Sufi poet, which we have a session tomorrow, some of us. When I was, you have this mesmerizing effect when you just look at the sand in the distance. And if we talk of techniques for meditation, and perhaps as you just look at that, things start happening and you imagine things. I'm not sure that, of course, all this didn't happen, but definitely some of it did. A single string plucked. A single string plucked. The Suranandos, that's an instrument, ancient folk instrument. The Suranando's melody surrounds the white desert. This is Kutch. Sand grains rise to the pitch of sunny. Sunny is a very ee sound. Sand grains rise to the pitch of sunny. Footsteps, gentler than camel strides, are heard. Figures seen in the dark, plates head on the blocks, waiting to be chopped off. This is a Sufi symbol, very common. We wait for God, whoever, to chop off our heads, to get rid of our ego. Some people spoke about it earlier. Flute music stirs hearts. Silhouettes bare chest, again a Sufi symbol. The assassin showers arrows. Assassin is God, I guess. The assassin shoots arrows. The Moki pure pours wine. The desert becomes a tavern in the celestial sphere. Travelers choose spirits, love, compassion, delight, anticipating the taste of nothingness. Thank you.
Well, it's my turn. I am a Kannada poet. I write only in Kannada, but I translate in and out, and I am translated into many, many languages, including English. So, a poet's journey. I just understood this whole session. What I have to do is through the word journey. Journey has many junctures. You know, each juncture takes you forward. And can you hear me now? Okay. So, journey takes you forward. And I don't know whether it is forward or backwards or whatever, you move. When you move from one place to the other. So I basically came from a little town called Sagar in Shimoga district, grew up there and saw a lot of greenery, happiness, peace, and there was no problem. Only later I realized I was in such a privileged position that I could not see anything else. So, I grew up there and then came to Bangalore later, and a different socio-political junctures of history has influenced and played role in my writing, the way it has moved from one space to the other. I began to write during the modernist movement in Kannada with the influence of great writers like Gopal Krishna Adiga, Bendre, Kuvempu, and others. Then, as I started writing, I also realized that I have been influenced by so many men. How come I am not influenced by women? And there was this women's movement which nurtured my writing. And through the women's movement, I also learned a lot. And coming to Bangalore, a city which was very attractive, which was very different, and being part of a new way of looking at world was something that helped me change my writing. I would like to read one poem which was written later, but I think sometimes we never realize what is happening, where we are going, and we will be just floated along something that is happening in the world. Kannu muಚ್ಚಲೆ ಆಟ ಒಂದು ಎಲೆ ಹಾಗೆ ಮೆಲ್ಲಗೆ ಮರದಿಂದ ಜಾರಿ ತೇಲುತ್ತ ಜೀಕುತ್ತ ಗಾಳಿಪಟವಾಗುತ್ತ ಗಾಳಿಯ ಮೈದಡವಿ ಜಾರುತ್ತ ನೀರ ಮೇಲಿನ ದೋಣಿಯಾಯ್ತು ಬಣ್ಣ ಬಣ್ಣದ ಮೀನ ಜತೆ ಆಲೆ ಆಲೆ ಮೇಲೆ ಹೊಳೆವ ಹಳದಿ ಹಸಿರಿನ ಚಮಕು ಚಮಕು ಸರ 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 ಕಣ್ಣು ತಪ್ಪಿಸಿ ನೀರ ಜತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮರೆಯಾಯ್ತು ನೀರಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಮೀನಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಗಾಳಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ನೀರಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಮೀನಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಗಾಳಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಮರಕ್ಕೂ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಈ ಕಣ್ಣು ಮುಚ್ಚೆಲೆಯಾಟ. You could hear the sounds, the music. Kannada is a language which has innate rhythm, you know. As I read, I am a Kannada literature student with comparative literature. I read Pampa, Kumaravyasa, Janna, the 12th century poets, the Sharanas, and then the 15th century Bhakti poets. And then, as I read everything, as I recited, I also would recite many things that I heard. Kamala kuchachu chuka kumkumato niyataru nitatula nilatano. I would walk like that. So the sound and the music and the meaning for me always comes later. I also request my readers that don't think about the meaning. Meaning comes by itself. Listen. A language has something to say, you know. So I started, and all these, the Kannada vibes, we call it as the pulse, Nadi Midita. That somehow seeped into, I allowed my Nadi, my nerve, for this language to seep its possible musicality and challenges. So as I did this, I also, there was this Dalit movement that happened. And from within the women's movement, the entire homogeneity was cancelled and diversity was celebrated, and I was there. My generation has walked through a journey of socio-political junctures that have influenced our writing, our thinking, and our way of renditions. In the meanwhile, I had to go to Hyderabad. I went to Hyderabad. Hyderabad was so different with Dakhni, with Urdu, and the smell is different, visuals are different, boards are different, everything is different. And that changed my poetry. And I wrote very differently while in Hyderabad. So I also wrote a poem for Hyderabad, and this poem is translated by Chitra Panikar and me. Hyderabad. Here, dows are the patchwork for the forsaken dooms. The glittering Zardozi borders, the rich green spread, knee on the ground, back bent. Allahu, the golden light of the early dawn, a cool breeze gripping the entire city. You cannot but stumble on a dargah. Dargahs all around, like Sahasralingas. Dargahs, like Sahasralingas. This city of boulders, with pillars of stone, scattered hillocks. The crest of every hillock carries a story. Here, yearly once, Lake Hussain Sagar is a secret tunnel to Mount Kailash. Hyderabad helped me change a lot, right from my attitude to my writing, you know. And I was introduced to Anveshi, Asmita, kind of women organizations in Hyderabad. I did my PhD there into politics of Hyderabad Central University. And all through, I also learned it is no use talking about one thing, like it could be anything, without addressing caste and gender. Gender, caste are two extremely essential elements that need to be addressed, and that came into my poetry. I also started using new technologies and started making poetry films, and I started collaborating with musicians, visual artists, and started doing installations, murals, public spaces, poetry in public space, and many things like that. And for me, when I came back to Bangalore, for me, by the time, poetry was a tool. I practiced poetry as a tool to say something else. During the CAA and NRC, I translated Hum Dekhenge into Kannada. And Tamil was translated based on Kannada thing. And I also wrote poems when two of my very dear friends were assassinated, Gauri Lankesh and Saket Raj. So, through the journey, you know, the poetry journey, you get to realize, you get to know, you get surprised, and also you feel so deeply helpless sometimes, you know. And then poetry comes to you. And it is the poetry that helps you say whatever you want to say. And then I started a group called Kavya Sanjay. And we started connecting with communities. I did a workshop with the Auto Rickshaw Drivers Union. I did a workshop where we produced poetry and read poems around weaving and sent it to the march that happened as a protest when the state started introducing machine looms in the handloom sectors. So I gradually started using poetry for various reasons, and Kavya Sanjay as a team has been with me all through. So poetry for me is something very special. And I will end this with reading one poem in translation, which I translated, which was written not maybe recently, but this fits for about a decade-long citizenship that I am going through in this country. The forest. I'm somebody who cannot sit and read.
Yes.
You know, a forest within me, dense plants, trees, creepers cover daylight with dark, blinding trails. Nannolagondu kaadu, datta gida, mara, balli. Invisible people look for paths to traverse. They stumble, stutter, struggle. They hide. Hide, they keep looking for things that remain unseen, scream and cry silently. They sporadically pluck blooming flowers of desire, wear them on their hair, place it on the ear, sing hymns of caste and equity, slit throats to show sympathy. The darkness. The darkness doesn't conceal this place. In this dark, what is seen is the imagined hatred, smoke of intolerance, sweltered scandals. Impossible to bear the scoff of this obscurity. I have swallowed the sun. I have swallowed the sun, drank up the oceans, the forest, darkness, path leading to nowhere. People wandering in search of directions, those that celebrate genocide, are now extended all over this land. Killers destroying the blooming flowers are now chasing the moon. The moon, concealed amidst the clouds, waiting for the sun, looking for shores she sets, pours light every now and then, though unable to capture the exhausted, untouchable moon. Futile castes have failed to realize that they are completely engulfed by darkness. They are engulfed by darkness. Kaadu. Oh. I will read the Kannada poem in the second round.
Okay, no, I'm good. I think first off, let me say how honored and happy I am to be here from Singapore and to be sharing the stage with giants of poetry. How wonderful. I also feel an instant kinship with Bangalore, because I don't know if you guys know, but there is a branch of MTR in Singapore. So an instant kinship with Bangalore. And I really like what I've heard about poetry today, so maybe I can sort of think a little bit about how I came to poetry and maybe meditate a bit on what poetry is for me and what it does. I like what Anju said about spontaneity. I think I was an accidental poet. I kind of stumbled into poetry. I never intended to be a poet. I was reading history as my undergraduate degree, and I was hanging out with a lot of these reprobates who were studying English, and I began to be influenced by them, I think. And then so really my first book is much more about trying to bring history into literature. I was starting to become dissatisfied with questions of academic history. I think academic history purported to tell you the truth, but often it also obscured it. So there was always a truth that was kind of missing, I think. So I think the poem that I'm going to read hints a bit at that. And this is from my first book, A Book of Changes. And the poem is titled, The Event. It's on me. If I can find it, I will read it. Yes. The event. When it first happened, everything was straightforward. The editors had it down to 4 inches and left the rest to a new restaurant. On TV, a professor said something axiomatic. There was a protest, or perhaps there was only a group of 6 people with illegible placards, quickly broken up. Most people forgot about it the week after. Those who knew wrote cryptic notes in the margins of old books. The bureaucrats lost the files in the flash flood, whispered commonplaces in the ears of the inquisitive. A long silence haunted by the bearer's ghost of truth. At last, the historians held a conference, announcing their discovery. But soon they accused each other of being revisionists. Others spoke of discourse, praxis, and collective memory. In the end, they agreed that perhaps the event was actually not that significant after all. Thank you. And so the first book is really in that mode of kind of history and inquiry. But I think both you and Anju spoke about surprise. Yeah. And kind of after writing in a certain mode in a while, I start becoming not surprised by myself. And I feel the need to disrupt myself and to kind of move out of this zone of comfort. And one way I did that was to translate, which I think we've spoken about as well. And I think translation has the power to disrupt your sense of language. To write too comfortably in one language is a crutch, I think. And then I kind of disrupt myself. So this poem from my second book gives you a sense of how I disrupt myself. And it's called Expression of Contentment. I am extraordinarily, really, very comfortable. Even my toes have gone for psychoanalysis. And my nose hairs have their favorite brand of chips. Sour cream, never barbecue. The tree outside my flat turned blue, and I said nothing. And all morning the clouds grew pregnant with knives, and I said nothing. And the table is cleaner than ever. There has been an utter genocide of dust. It's crazy. I'm so comfortable, my thighs have turned to organic jam, and my tongue is purple. Although, outside of a sundae, do you know what a strawberry tastes like? So that's kind of disruption, but I think I also want to be a place where I still connect with people. And so, really, in some ways, I've come back to connecting with people. And the easiest way I know to connect really is, because I'm quite a glutton, is through greed and through food. And maybe to tie it back to the MTR reference, let me read my last poem, which is really about this peculiar custom I have. So, I'm Chinese from Singapore, but my family always used to eat dosai for Chinese New Year, because all the Chinese shops would be closed, because it's Chinese New Year. So only the Indian shops would be open. So you would eat dosa for Chinese New Year. So dosa is the taste of Chinese New Year. Most of the stalls in the market are shut, so Pa buys it back in brown wrapping paper, the smell of spices suffusing the home. Groggy from last night's New Year's vigil, the longer you stay awake, the longer your parents live. I'm woken right up by the heat of the sambar. The starchy masala middle is a warm, gooey hug. Somehow, the dough is still crisp, and when the sambar gets too hot, the coconut chutney cools. Pa, my brother, and I are wordless. The special quiet of the first day, as the city pauses and allows itself to breathe just for a moment. These days, more and more shops stay open, always open. Ma finally wakes up, tucks in with us, also wordless. And after we are done, she says, "It's the new year and you haven't greeted me yet." And so we do, of course we do, Gong Hei Fat Hoi for Ma, who's Cantonese, and Kyong Yi Huat Zai for Pa, who's Hokkien, our hands clasped together. The rest of the day is more feasting and gluttony and New Year treats, yet nothing's quite as satisfying as that first bite of masala dosa and that wordlessness. Thank you.
We have had 3 incredible journeys documented, albeit in a few broad strokes because of the paucity of time. So for me, Poet's Journey, I'm going to put myself under the knife publicly, under these lights. So basically, it's an opportunity for me to look back at some of the bad poetry I'd written, because you start off with writing a lot of lush, bad stuff. So how does one get out of that wood of nettles? It's a nettlesome wood, It's not a very happy experience because everyone keeps telling you you're writing atrocious poetry. So you think, am I ever going to get out of this nightmare forest? And is there one poem where you can feel and others can feel, well, he's out of the woods? So I'll just read one such poem to you, which is from my very first collection, First Will and Testament. It's called Firing Squad. And I'll tell you in a word or two why this was a kind of the testament of an arrival. Last post then. Escape beyond all charges of escape. Things made easy for you when the difficulty is a thought. Summer was like my coffee going cold, too tepid for a swallow's roosting dream. At the cafe, time was held up by last year's unwelcome frost, and the coffee, never the toast of an epigram, sank the tongue in the sour lingering of a failed curse. 6 o'clock. Not quite dark to wipe all the shadows of homeless pigeons in hospitable squares with that tail of light that twitches at 5. Escape beyond all charges of escape. Comeuppance at 6, and all that history in the shade of a blink brings the blood running to the mind. It is difficult to think that at 6 o'clock, blood and mind shall write a new language for a phony apocalypse. So, I mentioned lushness, it's one of the problems, you almost like do a little historical tour, I think, when you are starting out as an English poet, albeit in India, because, your great influences must have been a Keats or a Browning or a Tennyson or a Swinburne or God knows who, Victoriana. You have to get it all out of your blood. And it's a very slow, painstaking process. I think the word unlearning has already been used, the very first session, So unlearning is a very difficult thing, and of course, Eliot speaks volumes about unlearning. It's not just all the English poets swimming in your blood, but get it out of your blood, all the bacteria and the virus from your blood. And you have to purify the bloodstream to find your own voice. So again, and of course, Maitreyi was reading poems about the city, about walking around the city. And many of my poems have been walking poems. Again, because I was heavily influenced by the modernists, who themselves were, in a way, plein-air poets, walking the great metropolises of Europe. So this is a kind of a tribute. This was, again, from my first collection, a tribute to those poets. But again, it seemed that I had found that control, that slight ironizing of the self in this poem as well. It's called Detour. Detour. A day of detours to the well-known. A day of delays, a day of plans and maps. The game of avoiding your own shadow, played in earnest, the day long. Defying with feet blindfolded the tick-ticking lizards of familiar places, with tracks of ether like the universe inside a sigh. Turning streets into windless alcoves unmolested by traffic, we breathed the delay of creation. Atoms fallen asleep between us dreamed of the interim of all action. Between our twin caresses, the evening breathed its mist on our faces. The lights came on, the world darkened into a fearless scab that dares another dark wound. And we walked between places, beyond maps, plans, and words. Detour. So, thank you. I'll just end this particular round of reading by reading a poem from, again, from my first collection. As I said, hurry up, please, it's time. I'm just quoting Eliot. But I'm also nodding towards kind of volunteers. This one's called By the Sea. Again, you'll see it's about the terseness and the control, which you obviously want as a poet, in addition to the suggestiveness, perhaps. It's a very short poem. The long, hot days of faithfulness are at an end. Beneath the marquee lid, you see a careless sea boiling with the ennui of another's purpose. You see a sky that some painter used to wipe his used brushes, the masterpiece being elsewhere. Thank you. So I think I don't think we have time for a second round. So with that, hearty thanks to the organizers. We end this session. Thank you so much.
Yeah.